Hello and welcome back on my channel. Thank you so much for joining me again for Freebook Friday.
Fantasy Edition.
I'm so pumped about this new series that I actually forgot to film the intro to this one. So please don't be surprised if I might have changed appearance. I wanted to do more collaborations. I wanted to look into other ways of reading that don't cost a lot of money, and combining them became Freebook Friday. Without making the intro a lot longer than necessary, let's skip back in time to when I introduced Bianca. And today I have another wonderful guest with me. Hi!
Hi!
Do you want to just introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, I'd love to. My name's Bianca. I go by Binx Thinx on the internet. I started blogging before I started BookTube, so I do have a blog, Instagram, and Goodreads is where you could usually find me. I don't really have a specific genre that I focus on. I'm kind of an eclectic reader and an eclectic person in general, and I'm very happy to be here today.
Awesome. I love people who are very well-rounded in their reading. All right, so let's dive into our read. So do you just want to start by giving us a quick summary of what we read together?
So we read Eternal, which is the first book in the Queen's Alpha series by W.J. May. So this story starts where the princess Katerina is woken up in the middle of the night because her father has been murdered by her brother. So she gets snuck out of the castle and she finds people to help her, keep her safe, and she kind of goes on a journey to escape her brother because she's scared that he wants to kill her too. So she meets all kinds of creatures like fairies, giants, and she travels with a mercenary, which is really interesting. And the book ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, so she hasn't reached the end of her journey yet, and I assume it will continue in the next book.
Awesome, thank you. That was a good synopsis. Let's dive right into our review. Let's start talking about what we thought of the characters.
Okay, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I really felt like this was a little bit all over the place regarding the characters. I couldn't fully connect to our main character. It felt a little bit like our main character wasn't crafted well enough. Like, it wasn't well rounded. It just felt very one-dimensional. And then there were so many different types of characters. As you briefly mentioned, very different mystical beings mixed into one very, very short book. I felt like I was coming to a costume party.
I totally agree with you, honestly. I couldn't connect with our main character at all. Everything was a bit all over the place, and I feel like it took parts from other books or stories that I recognize, which I would have loved if it was done in the right way. Like, I don't know if you've read or watched Ella Enchanted, but this kind of had a similar vibe for me, where she kind of also goes on a journey, but she goes with a prince instead of her being the princess. So it's kind of like a gender bend. And they also meet fairies and elves and giants, and that was done really, really well. And I felt like this book tried to do that, but it fell flat.
Right. I haven't read Ella Enchanted, but I felt like this type of setup is a very typical trope in this genre. But it also felt like it's more of a typical trope that I would see in more of a middle grade or a very young adult. So that was a little bit weird for me. And then it was just very short for the amount of encounters that our main character had. Well, at least for me.
Yeah, no, I agree as well, because it kind of felt like, oh, we just met this one person and then we immediately said goodbye, and now she's stumbling into somebody else's house or getting kidnapped and all these weird things happening. just for the sake of it happening. There wasn't really like a purpose to it.
Yeah, and I think we're diving right into talking about the plot storyline here, which is absolutely fine. It's very tied together, and I absolutely agree that this is, so it felt a little bit disconnected. It felt more like you would, like 20, 30 years ago when you would design a TV show, all the episodes had to stand on their own. And you would have this one setup with like this person running from her brother and meeting mystical creatures. And then in each episode she would meet somebody else. But it wasn't connected, and this is how it felt reading this. Like I was binge watching an old series where the episodes are not connected.
I love that comparison, and I totally get that vibe as well. And I think it also might have tied into like those old 90s shows that you're kind of referring to, like maybe Buffy or Charmed. That's what I immediately thought of. And that also connects to where I felt that the characters kind of went out of character, because they're meant to be in this like fantastical world, but sometimes they would say things as if they were on Gossip Girl, like when she asked him like, oh, do you have a girlfriend, or stuff like that. And I just got very taken out of the story when things like that would happen.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. That's a good call.
Yeah.
So you think the author wanted to do too much at once?
Yeah, definitely. And I got the vibe that this was maybe one of their first books that they wrote, and maybe published it themselves as well, because I think an editor may have been helpful.
Yeah, an editor might have removed one or two scenes, one or two encounters, and said, well, flesh out the other ones a little bit and find a tie between those a little bit more.
Yeah, I totally agree.
That's a very good point. So saying that this was potentially probably the first, like the debut novel, was it even a novel? I mean, it was very short. How many pages was it? 200? It was, strictly speaking, it was a novel already, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what did you think of the writing style?
I kind of hated it.
Oh, really?
To be honest, yeah, I didn't like it. I felt like because the writing was bad, everything else fell flat a bit as well. I don't know, it was a little bit stunted. How did you feel about the writing?
I didn't find it to be a problem at all. I enjoy oftentimes, especially with this type of book, if the writing style is very easy and not in the forefront. So I don't necessarily need a very lyrical, extremely well crafted writing style. I enjoy when the writing style is so simple that I forget that I'm reading. And if it weren't for the storyline that it had this disconnect, I could totally forget that I'm reading, because it didn't feel like some very lyrical, poetic writing style, which is also can also be good, but there was nothing in this writing style where I felt like, that's odd how she's describing this. This is very like this wording feels off, or this wording feels like nobody would say that.
It feels like, for me, that ties back to what I was saying about the dialogue, feeling like she wanted to have things that people would say now, and it took me out of that world. And that was like part of, I feel like her descriptions and the dialogue didn't really tie in well together, and that's what made me not like the writing style.
Yeah, and I get that. Probably if I would read it again now, I could see what you're saying. I didn't notice it at first, and it didn't bother me at all.
That's really good, because then I think you enjoyed it more than I did.
Yes.
So.
And I think that this is a major factor why I enjoyed it more, because the characters were a lot. The storyline was a little bit rushed, but the writing style, and not that it didn't stop me, and I had to shake my head and like, why is she writing it like this? Really saved it for me. But I completely get you. So what do you think was the best about this book? That's gotta be a hard one, I have a feeling.
Yeah, I'm a bit critical, I think.
Which is good.
I I like the idea of it. I really like the idea because, like I said, I have enjoyed stories like this before, like Ella Enchanted, which is a middle grade, and even Tangled, like the whole thing, they're also going on a similar journey and meeting people along the way. So I do like that general storyline, and it would have been, I don't know, it kind of felt like a bad fan fiction. So I think if it was edited a bit more and rewritten, it can actually be something really great. So I like the idea, and I commend the author for actually writing and finishing a book. So yeah.
That's like the kiss of death. Well done for finishing.
Well, it's more than I've done, so I have to give it that.
Okay, no, I get it, and I do in general agree. Although I did overall probably feel a little bit more positive about this book than you did, which is totally fine. And this is honestly what I love about this like combined review a lot, because we not only learn from each other. I feel like this review is more well-rounded if you have two different opinions in it. I love that.
Yeah. I love it too. It's been so fun so far.
So I do agree with what I like best, though. I think that the idea is really cute. I think the two things, Ella Enchanted and Tangled, that you mentioned, are both based on fairy tales, right?
Yes.
So it does have a little bit of that fairy tale feeling, and it is leaning on it, but then it is also leaning on the very modern urban fantasy as well. I think she included vampires and stuff as well in this book. So it really felt like there was a lot in it. And I still enjoyed the idea, and I would be interested to see where this series is going, if it's still going to be all over this place, or if it's going to start focusing a little bit more. By the way, I didn't like how this book ended at all.
Me neither.
Let's just move on and talk about if there's potentially something we did not like as much and haven't mentioned it yet.
I think I've mentioned most of it. I would have liked to see some more character development.
Yes.
And maybe a bit more background information on some of the other characters. Like they were just kind of there, and I don't know, it didn't feel really like they served much of a purpose a lot of the time. So I guess that would have been nice.
I agree with the character development. I do think that it is hard to develop a lot of characters across like 200 something pages, but it is possible, absolutely. And at least have the main character be crafted well and developed well.
Yeah.
But I think that what I did not like the most was actually the ending and how it came to the ending, because it felt like it was an unnecessary cliffhanger. It felt like we were being introduced to another quick encounter, and all these encounters were really short episodes, and this was just starting the episode and then being like, oh yeah, we'll stop there. And I did not like that at all.
I also didn't like that. Also, like, the villain didn't really show up at all, which I found like odd. Like, it was just introduced at the beginning as the kind of reason for this journey she's going on. It also wasn't too clear to me where she was going on this journey, just kind of running away. So I think more like purpose would have helped in connecting more with her.
I mean, she is, right? She is just running away. She doesn't have a... Does she have a goal where to go? Not really. She's just leaning on other people right now.
Yeah, and that bothered me as well, because like generally in these types of books, like there's some end destination of like you're going to see like the magical wizard to help you or something. Whereas I just felt like this was kind of aimless.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's a really good point, because where I do think it actually would give this a little bit of a realistic touch, because we don't always know what to do. We don't always know where to go. If this was intentional to kind of break with the traditions in this genre, or in this like trope, it should have been done a little bit more intentional. So being like, okay, because this person doesn't know where to go, let's make her think about it more. Let's make her be like, oh shit, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to do. And this actually becoming a problem and not her wandering aimlessly around like she's Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally agree with that.
Although Alice had a goal. It's like the worst comparison ever, because Alice had a goal.
Like, I think that's the purpose of books, you know. You want to know that this is going to wrap up and you're going to have some sort of ending, and it's not going to drop off in the middle of nowhere. And that also is why I took quite long to finish this book, because I just felt like, okay, this is just more of the same, nothing's really going on. There wasn't like a reason for me to be like, I want to know if she gets there, I want to know what happens. And like maybe just going to an uncle for help, or if the purpose was to get out of the specific domain of her brother's rule, but none of that was specified, and I think it really detracted from the book.
One thing that I was still wondering about is the name of the series. So the book was called Eternal, which I didn't really get either, like why is the title Eternal? But then the series is called The Queen's Alpha.
That kind of gave me wolf vibes, and I expected there to be like a werewolf, and
maybe that's still coming. The brother is a werewolf.
Maybe. Or you know, the guy who was traveling with her, I can't even remember his name. I feel like maybe he is a wolf, because even on the cover of the book, I feel like in the background there seems to be like a little wolf going on.
Oh, there is. There is. Yeah, you're right.
I don't know. Maybe he's her alpha. And it's going to be some weird like werewolf love story. I don't know. That's
a really good observation. I didn't even notice the werewolf on the cover that much, but I unconsciously noticed it, obviously. So I was waiting for this aspect as well, and that's a very good call. Potentially, this was a rushed first book, and I'm wondering if this also potentially could be a trend, because by now I have read a few free ebooks that are quite short and that are part of a series, and sometimes I wonder if they would have been better being one book, like the first, second, third book being actually one big book and a little bit more fleshed out.
Probably, but I think maybe that could be a marketing strategy, because like I said, this seems very indie, so self-published, and maybe they do it like that purposefully to just get a teaser so that you can buy the other books.
Which makes sense.
And that's the way they make money.
But then
it does.
If you do that, it needs to be a really good, strong first book.
Yes, it does.
I think it would feel better to have this being one bigger book. And I mean, obviously, I haven't read the second one or any further in the series. Potentially, the whole thing would come together more if it would have given more of a 400, 500 page book and stretch it out a little bit more, flesh it out a little bit more, have the story arc a little bit more, like, graciously, I don't know. And
yeah, I agree. And another thing that this made me think of immediately was Prince Caspian. I think it's like the third or fourth Narnia book. I don't know if you've read that one. Yeah, where it starts in the middle of the night, he has to run away and his wizard helps him escape and the magical animals help him. But even that story, like, it ended up having a purpose. And those books are really, really short, and a lot can happen in 200, 300 pages, but it needs to happen in the right way to keep the reader invested.
I agree. The lack of purpose didn't bother me that much, to be honest. But it would have been nice if it was fleshed out a little bit more about the part that she doesn't have a purpose, that she doesn't know where to go. But I fully agree and see your points, and I totally can see how they can really bother somebody. So what rating did you end up giving it?
I gave it a 1 star. Because I do love fairy tale stories and like paranormal stories. That's like my kind of vibe that I grew up reading. I've since like expanded my horizons, but this is like the basic kind of story that I like. So I was personally disappointed at how bad I felt it was.
Okay.
That's why I gave it such a harsh rating.
I fully understand that, and I think that I probably gave it a bonus star because I'm a little bit saturated by this type of story right now, and I felt like my saturation of the genre should not impact the star rating. So I'm giving it a bonus star, the same as I'm careful about not giving things that I'm currently completely hyped about because I love this genre and just because I enjoy reading this genre more stars than it deserves. I'm not sure if I ended up giving it 2 or 3 stars because I was in between the two. It felt way too bad to be 3 stars, but it also felt like it didn't fully deserve just 2 stars. So I think it was a 2 star for me, and it got the bonus star for being a genre that I'm saturated with. It just was not my thing to have all these different creatures, and I could see somebody who would love having all these different creatures in one book actually really enjoying this.
Yeah. No, I get that. And I can totally see that if you enjoy the writing style and other parts of it that you'd rate it higher than I did, because I was very harsh with it.
Which is good.
I do know that.
No, that's good.
Yeah. I'm trying to be a bit more critical with my ratings because when I first started rating books, it was very intimidating and I didn't want to be mean to the books, but I went back and just said that, okay, well, 1 star means that I didn't like it, so I can give a 1 star. If I didn't like a book, you don't need to feel like you need to give it a higher rating if you don't actually feel that way about a book.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. I do try especially when I'm going in the lower end, I do try and take my enjoyment a little bit out of it and consider, is there anything in the book that I absolutely hated that I need to call out because it was hurtful, it was really bad, that it needs to be corrected right now and this book should not exist like this? And if that's not the case, is it just my personal opinion that it's really bad? Like, is it my personal enjoyment, or is it objectively bad? Because I feel bad giving a book a 1-star rating if it's just because I am not the target audience, or because I didn't get it because I'm not the target audience, or because I'm saturated by the genre. That happened a couple of times in the past, and I caught myself saying, well, that's actually not fair to the book because the book is actually good. It's just because it went over my head because I am not the target audience, that I'm rating it badly, and that felt wrong. So that's why I'm a little bit more hesitant to rate 1 or 2 stars if it's not objectively a shitfest.
No, but like, I don't know, ratings are so personal, and
True.
You're not the only person that the book wouldn't be aimed for. So people might look at lower reviews to find out if they should or shouldn't read it. And I go through very high ratings and very low ratings most of the time to see like, okay, this is why that person didn't like this story, but I would really like that. So that's why I'll give it a try.
You are very right. That's what I do as well, especially going through the lower ratings to see why people didn't like it. I do that a lot when I start a book and I'm not feeling it. I start going through bad ratings to see, hey, is what I am concerned about getting any better, or has it been called out a lot? So that's a very good point that you're making.
Thank you. I actually got called out once on Twitter a while ago for giving a book a 1-star rating, and it was a book that I didn't finish all the way through, but I wanted to give it the 1 star because there were trigger warnings that should have been there that weren't, and I was heavily triggered by that book because of past trauma. And someone screenshotted my rating and posted it on Twitter, and it happened to be someone that I followed. So then I saw that they'd done that and asking, oh, why would you do this? Why would you rate a book 1 star when you haven't finished it all the way through? So
that's a debate,
like,
yeah.
You know, like, and my personal reasoning for it was that, you know, there was a reason why I couldn't finish that book, and I'd rather, you know, make it stand out a bit so that somebody else who might have gone through the same thing will do their research a bit more before reading it and feeling the same way I did when reading that book.
I fully agree with your decision there. I think that there's a difference between DNFing a book that you just don't care about, that you're bored about, that you're not feeling. I think that you should not rate this one low just because you're not feeling it and you're DNFing it. But if you have reasons for DNFing that kind of point towards this book having problems that need to be addressed, I absolutely am for giving it a low rating. I did that in the past as well with one book where I said I cannot finish this book if it has such a masochistic, sexist, really badly written character. And I couldn't see nobody saying something about it. Everybody was like, ooh, it's like the second Harry Potter. I'm like, Harry Potter? I didn't like Harry Potter as a character, but he was not that bad. We did not have 3 pages of just talking about picking up a girl and how great he is and how he usually enjoys just having sex for a night and how he is having trouble doing that today. And I was like, this is so bad. I don't need this, and I don't need my son to read this either. So
no, like I think like how you feel about a book and whether you finish it or not, it's valid. And like I feel like not finishing a book is a good reason to give it a low rating, because if you couldn't make it through, then it's not a good book for you. So I think it's pretty valid
if it's for
to do that.
Objective reasons. I think a lack of trigger warning or something that you're criticizing is an objective reason. If it's just because you're not in the mood for this genre, I don't think it would be fair to give it a bad rating.
Yeah, no, I never do that. Like, if I'm not feeling it right now, I'll put it down.
Yeah.
I'll take it off of my shelves and, like, leave it for later, because that just means I'm not in the mood for it right now. Or maybe won't ever read it again if I was really bored. But, you know, if it didn't affect me in a major way, it's not a big deal.
So let's just go ahead and give it our verdict. I am wondering what you're going to say. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Is it a read or pass? So I'm not surprised that it is a pass for you. I'm going to give it a very careful read. If you are interested in having these different characters and having a kind of aimless journey where it's just about the journey and meeting different characters. If you consider this critique and you are still interested, go and read it.
And for me, it's a pass because, like I said, there were so many things that I didn't like about it, and there are other stories that I thought did this kind of style better that I would recommend instead.
Absolutely valid. And I love that you were on my channel doing this with me. As I mentioned, I love that this becomes so much more well-rounded, and I hope that some people who enjoy watching reviews a little bit more critically might potentially enjoy watching some of your videos or visit your blog.
Thank you so much. This was really fun doing this with you, and if you want to buddy read another book again in future, just let me know.
I definitely want to do that, and that goes out to everybody out there. If you want to buddy read a free ebook with me for this series, just reach out to me. Until that happens, I hope that everybody subscribes to both our channels and just like this video. And if you just could comment how you enjoyed this review and give it a thumbs up if you're more on the give this a read, or a thumbs down if you think you should give it a pass emoji. This is it, and I hope to see you again on my channel really soon. Until then, bye!
Bye!
Just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can you know